Buen dia, my fellow interwebers. This is Christopher Gardner coming to you with PodVlog. Today we're going to go through the Tim Ferriss Show again, and also a new podcast from Malcolm Gladwell called Revisionist History. I just listened to his episode 3. It's one of the best podcasts I ever listened to. Malcolm Gladwell, if you haven't ever read any of his books, I read Outliers a few years ago. He is a wonderful storyteller, and the way he storytells within his podcast, this particular podcast was called Big Man Can't Shoot. Absolutely awesome podcast. It gets into why people do things when they know it's not the best thing for them. And this is awesome to think about, especially when people are trying to predict things. We usually try and make predictions based on rationality. But rationality is not the reason why people do things. Most people make purchasing decisions. It's an emotional reaction. So he chronicles a little bit about Wilt Chamberlain, one of the best centers to ever play in the NBA. And he talks about how he went from improving his foul shooting to an unbelievable, like almost doubling his accuracy percentage, to going back to his old way and becoming ineffective at it just because he didn't like the way he was perceived. This, to me, is anthropology 101. People make decisions and do things that just do not make any sense. And a lot of it has to do with what they perceive as social pressure, like what they perceive as people, how they see them. So please check out Malcolm Gladwell's podcast, Revisionist History. There's going to be a link in the show notes. The Tim Ferriss Show this Sunday was awesome. It was he and Kevin Rose. Kevin Rose seems to be like totally my type of dude because he's sort of a gadget head. And he's always talking about, the best coffee makers and best pens. And it's just fun. If you want to hear two dudes rapping out about, fun stuff, like, I really appreciate it. It was a really good show. One of the topics they touched on that was close to my heart was the microdosing of psilocybin. And I've never microdosed with psilocybin, but I have had friends that have done that and have solved a lot of their PTSD from their military excursions. And I have friends that have microdosed with DMT with great benefit. I believe there's a YouTube channel called Black Pigeon Speaks. Very controversial site. I don't agree with what the gentleman says about everything, but he does bring up topics that need a little bit of limelight, if you know what I mean. So this particular podcast with Tim Ferriss and Kevin Rose, Tim Ferriss is actually raising money for there to be clinical experiments in looking into the long-term benefits of microdosing with psilocybin. If you don't know what psilocybin is, if you've ever heard of magic mushrooms, that's where psilocybin comes from. It's and if you've never done it, don't knock it till you try it. It can be pretty intense, but always consider set and setting. These types of chemicals, they really enhance the setting that you're in. So make sure that you're in a safe setting. And I by no means am saying go do it, but if you choose to do it as a responsible adult, it can be very beneficial. They also talk about this thing called the memory palace. I read this book, Moonwalking with Einstein, a few years ago about a author who decided to become a memory champion, where he kind of got caught up in the flow of things. And this is very pertinent to our day and age because most people are using their phone as their surrogate memory. Almost all my adult friends and a lot of the millennial people that I know, they don't refer to their memory ever. When was the last time you memorized a phone number? You remember back in the day, actually having to memorize a phone number? It was like I had like 50 different people in my head of like their actual phone numbers. So the memory palace is pretty incredible because you're putting a memory with a visual cue. And I want to give a shout out to Memrise. It's a wonderful website that helps you learn languages by associating a picture of the vocabulary word with the actual thing. And the program it has an algorithm in it where it will change the photo and then it really locks it into your memory. So I'm having really great luck with Memrise, and it's really helping me as a visual learner with learning Spanish. So check out the Tim Ferriss Show. Awesome. Check out Revisionist History. Like I said, there's links in both the show notes. Please leave a comment when you get the opportunity to. I want to hear from my audience. Also, check out biocharisma.com. This week, I'll be doing another podcast with Brendan McKeon, and I'll give a little bit of a summary, a synopsis of that on this show, and I'll see you tomorrow.